Udeta, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Shaju. സുഖല്ലേ?
സുഖം. എന്തൊക്കെയുണ്ട് വേറെ വിശേഷങ്ങൾ?
സ്പ്രെഡിങ്ങിനെ കൂടുതലേ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ നേരത്തെക്കാൾ വല്ലാതെ ഇനിഷ്യൽ സ്റ്റേജിൽ പ്രശ്നം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല, പക്ഷെ ഇപ്പോ വല്ലാതെ ഇഷ്യൂലേക്കല്ലേ പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നു.
അതെ.
നമസ്കാരം.
Hello, Shiv.
Yeah.
I think you are audible. Hello.
Can you hear me, Bharat?
Yeah, I can hear you. Shiv, 1 second. Dear panelists, I request you all to keep yourself muted. Yeah, I request all of you to keep yourself muted and don't unmute until your turn comes. And we are having a testing. I request you all to keep yourself muted. Hello, Shiv.
Yep.
Yeah, you are pretty much audible to all of us. Can you try sharing your screen?
Sharing my screen share. Okay. Share content. Okay. Yes. Can you see, Bharat, my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen, sir.
In full screen presentation mode?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, so I hope you are comfortable with your sharing thing and you are familiarized.
Yeah, sure, yes.
Yeah.
Hi,
So
Shiv. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Damle.
Can you just run the slides and see once?
1 second, I have revoked the thing.
Oh, you need to enable me as a...
Yeah, you can try now, sir.
Good morning, Shivji.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
Hope you remember me.
Am I speaking to Dr. Lata?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah.
The slides are not moving. Hello?
Yeah, Shiv, we can hear you.
Yeah, but the slides don't move.
You try with up and down arrows.
Yeah, I'm trying with all the 4 arrows possible. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's recontribute it and see, because sometimes it's all about, because it's all on the online mode. We just read all the parameters.
Otherwise, we can do one more thing. And anyhow, I have your slides with me, and I can share my screen, and you can just go on presenting, sir. Will that be okay?
You mean to say I can send the presentation to you?
You have already sent it to me, no, sir, through email. So I can just keep it open.
No, I didn't send the presentation to you. I only sent the picture.
Okay.
But if you want,
Yeah.
I can share the slides. That's not a problem. I can send it to you.
Yeah, that would be great.
That will make it easy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sending you straight away.
Yeah, please.
Can you exit? I don't know. It's not exiting from.
Yeah, we will revoke. No problem. You can make me as presenter.
So every time I will ask you to
Go
change
next.
this.
Yeah, next.
Okay, so Bharat. So I'm sending you now.
Okay.
It's a huge file, so you should, you know. Okay, Bharat. Hello, Bharat.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sent you the email.
Okay, I'll just check.
Priya, switch on the light. Switch on the light.
Download started.
Did you get my mail, Bharat?
Yeah, sir. I received.
Only thing is I won't get cursor control, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Bharat, we can see it now. Can you just skip, go through it? Okay. Yeah. Perfect. You can go back. Yeah. I see Dr. Jayadevan. Good morning. Dr. Saiju, I can see you. I can see Dr. G. Vinod Kumar, sir. And I can see Sadat.
Yeah, good morning,
Good
sir.
morning. Oh, Uday Kumar, Rija,
Yes,
and
good morning.
I think it must be a technical guy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, Manoj. Oh, Dr. Lata, Anju, and Dr. Shivan will join soon. Yeah, that's 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. And this has been endeavor by Ayurveda Medical Association of Kerala, All India Kerala chapter, Atrimed Pharma Bangalore, and Ayurveda Vilasini Vaidishala Calicut. We are glad to have my friend Shiv here. His name is Dr. Shiva Bala Subramanian, but we call him Shiv. So this is going to be very interesting. I will introduce Shiv later. Now, let me call upon Dr. Uday Kumar to welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, all. Respected Chairman Atrimedx, Dr. Shivan Ganju, Dr. C.V. Jaydevan, Principal, Ayurveda College, Kottakkal, Dr. Krishesh Damble, CEO Atrimedx, Dr. G. Vinod Kumar, former President, AMI, Dr. Sadat Dinagar, General Secretary, AMI, Dr. Manoj Kadu, former CCI member and the MD, Ayurveda Vilasini Vaidishala, Dr. Lata Damble, and Dr. Shaiju Olakad, a researcher and medical officer, and my dear friends, those who are watching from all over the world. This is an important talk series organized by Ayurveda Medical Association of India, Atrimedx, and Ayurveda Vilasini Vaidishala. This talk is the second series of this kind, second edition. All we are know that in the COVID scenario, all scientific community is running behind the vaccine and the antiviral remedies all over the world. In the meantime, we have knowledge that the immunocompromised persons are vulnerable to the disease. That is why the immunomodulation is a hot subject in the health sector. Today's topic is immune modulation a health option amidst the COVID pandemic? We are fortunate to get a renowned immunologist and molecular biologist, Dr. Shiva Subramanian, Executive Director, Indore Biotechnologies India Private Limited, Bangalore, Atrimedx and Ayurveda Medical Association of India and Ayurveda Vilasini Vaidishala. I cordially welcome Dr. Shiva Subramanian to this discussion. We have eminent panelists, Dr. Dr. Shiban Ganju, Chairman Atrimedx, Dr. C.V. Jaydevan, Principal, VPSV Ayurveda College, Kottakkal, Dr. G. Vinod Kumar, Medical Association of India, Dr. Dinagar, General Secretary, Ayurveda Medical Association of India, Dr. Manoj Kadu, Dr. Lata Damle, and Dr. Shaiju. I also welcome our panelists along with Dr. Shikesh Damle, CEO Atrimedx. I also welcome all the participants, those who are watching from all over the world to this session. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Uday Kumar. That was very kind of you. So let me have the privilege of introducing Dr. Shivashankara Balasubramanian. So in a gist, he is one of the finest individuals, a very good scientist, and aptitude as well as attitude for science is immaculate. He's a perfect scientist, one of the very few perfect scientists I have seen. Anyway, he has done his BSc from chemistry in Pondicherry University. Then he did his MSc in biochemistry from Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. He did his PhD in biochemistry from All India Institute of Medical Science, Delhi. He has won several awards, but I'll read out two of them. He's a recipient of Best Innovative Product from the Indian College of Allergy, Asthma and Applied Immunology for the development of multiple assays and allergen detection. He received International Traveling and Research Fellowship from Wellcome Trust, UK. He has a few more, and he has delivered talks at Duke NUS Medical School, Singapore. Invited speaker at A-Star Australia at NHMRC Symposium. He has given talks in Heidelberg, Germany, Honolulu, Hawaii, Stockholm, etc., mostly on immunology. He has around 28 papers to his credit in international journals, and more to come. He has successfully he has illustrious career as well. He was a research fellow at School of Medicine, Cardiff University. Interestingly, our next speaker also will be from Cardiff University. He was a principal investigator at Singapore Institute of Clinical Sciences, Singapore, from 2009 to 2013. He was a director and research operator of Thrombosis Research Institute, Bangalore. And right now, he founded a company called Indoor Biotechnologies in Bangalore. And he continues to be an executive director, which he has led this company successfully to professionally as well as financially. So he has got illustrious professional summary. He was a scientist. He's a scientist in Indore now. He was a scientist in many other institutes before. So over to Shiv.
Thank you, Dr. Damle, and I also appreciate for giving me this opportunity, and I thank the entire panel members for this opportunity. So it's a privilege to be a speaker, and particularly a second speaker in this series. Bharat, can I have my slides, please? Can you all see the slides?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So the topic I have chosen is is immune modulation, a healthy option amidst the COVID pandemic. There is a reason behind this topic because probably all of you must have seen in the last, next slide please, in the last couple of months, a lot of talk has been, or a lot of advertisement coming in papers and in other places, like saying, immunity boosters. For example, you can see that, there is an immunity booster, Kadas, which are given to COVID patients with the assumption that it is going to help them. And again, there is similar such products which are coming from some sort of concoction or some sort of plant extract or so. And it seems to be that, immunity is the buzzword now. And next slide, Bharat. Next slide. Sorry, have you done the next slide? Yeah, so sorry, I think some confusion here. This is, I looked at how the global world is trending to immunity booster. So I looked at Google Trends, which tells you, what sort of search people are doing on Google Trends and on Google search engine, and what sort of information is coming. And you can see that, since March, when the pandemic hit, there's tremendous increase in search for immunity booster, the term immunity booster. So that tells you, what the people are looking for and what sort of impact it has had on people's lives. Everybody is scared, and they thought that, by boosting their immunity, they will be able to protect themselves from the COVID. And when we look at this more regionally, and India seems to be more crazy about it. Like, there's loads of searches from India. In fact, you can see it is 100% for India where compared to other regional countries, much less. So something is really happening or driving this particular aspect, particularly the immunity boosters products in India and in the region and globally as well. So the question that we have is, do these products really work? Or is that important to, is it really, next slide, Bharat? So do these products really modulate immunity? That's the fundamental question. And the second question is it wise to modulate immunity during COVID pandemic? So we will try to answer these two questions in a more systematic manner. Like answering some basic questions, like what is immunity? And secondly, can immunity be modulated? And what happens during COVID, immune response during COVID? The pros and cons of modulating the immune response during COVID, and can nutraceuticals and phyto products modulate immune response? So this is the sort of the structure that I have given for today's talk. So we'll try to answer one by one, and you can either stop in between and ask me something which you think is important, or if you want to keep the questions towards the end, I'm fine with both options. So the first question is, what is immunity? So immunity, this is again a textbook definition, but we will go into details of this. It's important to understand what is immunity. So I'll go into detail of it, but for now, like immunity can be defined as a complex biological system endowed with the capacity to recognize and tolerate whatever belongs to the self, and to recognize and reject what is foreign, non-self. That is like, infections and so on. So with this understanding, can we have the next slide? Immunity is, orchestrated by a complex biological systems. Like, these are the cells of the immune system, and which can be classified into innate part and adaptive part. And they all work in synchronous to each other. In the sense, like, initially you will have the innate immune system, which is composed of cells like, monocytes, antigen presenting cell, macrophages, and so on. They are the one that first embrace the challenge that we encounter. And then these cells eventually, help in developing an adaptive immune response, which are the T cells, B cells, and so on. So it is not like, it all, innate immune system functions separately, and then the adaptive immune systems function separately. They all work together in a very coordinated manner to have an optimal immune response. See, I think it is important to understand, what is an immune response. It's not like, something which you can scale up and up. Rather, it is more having an optimal immune response is the key. Next. So a lot of focus, right now is on these T and B cells, and the reason is, they play a role in viral infections, particularly, while all these cells work together, the effective relief or the infection is cleared by these T cells and the B cells function. And a lot of this effort is currently focused on this particular cells, particularly as we are trying to develop vaccines. I'm not going into the vaccines part, as I remember Naren Shirmule addressed the vaccines, importance of vaccines in COVID in the previous talk. So I won't go into the vaccines part, rather I'd stick to the immunology side of it, the immunity side of it. Next slide, please. So, what I want to, make it clear is, if you want to have immunity against a particular antigen, you need prior exposure to the antigen. Okay. So if you don't have an exposure to an antigen, you won't have immunity. And that's exactly the problem right now we have with COVID. Basically, this is a brand new virus. Our body does not have the immune system developed against it. So when we have this virus encountered, the body takes time to generate an immune response. And when it tries to generate an immune response, there is no regulation available. As a result, the immune system, the immune responses sometimes can be very uncontrollable also. So let's look at, in terms of B cell and T cells, what happens. So here, B cell is, a B cell, when it encounters an antigen, it takes it up and presents it on the surface of it, and then which then recognized by the T cells. When the T cell and B cell interaction happens, the B cells gets differentiated into plasma cells, which are the antibody producing cells. So these antibodies then goes and neutralizes the virus. So in this, it needs the antigen to be exposed to these cells. Otherwise, these cells won't function. Similarly, for T cells, the antigens are presented by the antigen presenting cells, and then these T cells undergo maturation and differentiation, and then they get differentiated into CD4 cells, which helps the B cells in generating a B cell response, whereas the CD8 positive cells become, cytotoxic T cells, and then they go and kill the virus infected cells, and thereby clearing the viruses. So this is what happens. In all this, you need the antigen to be exposed. If you don't have the antigen, then you can't really, have an immune response against that particular pathogen. So the question that straight away comes in up, when we take, immunity boosting drugs, is it really going to help us? So we'll come back to this question much more later, but let me continue with this, providing an understanding about the immunity. Next slide, please. So acquired immunity is, again, once you have an immunity generated, it's a lifelong process, because, you can, once you have it, it's going to be in your system throughout your life, and it is going to offer you protection. So which acquired immunity is what we generate, through the T and B cells, and this can be, generated either via an infection or through vaccination. So when you have this generated through an infection or vaccination, it leaves you, with the immunological memory, and as a result, it protects you lifelong. For example, all the vaccines that we get in our childhood even protects us at a very later period. That's because of the immunological memory that we have in our body. So this is one of the key aspects of the adaptive immunity or the acquired immunity. So it provides this protection. And this is now also used therapeutically. For example, when somebody doesn't have, those sort of, the antibody against, or the T cells against this pathogen, then you can give them, as a treatment option to these patients, and that can also help. But then they won't have a memory there, and it's a short-term protection. It is more of a therapy that can be used. And convalescent plasma therapy in COVID is one such example where the antibodies are used for this. And also, there are also other cell-based approaches like CAR T cells and so on for other immunological conditions. Next slide, please. So immunity, then, I just want to tell you, immunity is not a linear scale, in the sense, you have a certain level of immunity, you take an immunity booster product, and then your immunity goes high. And then you take another one, it goes high. It doesn't work like that. Rather it's, next, please. Rather, it is a balance between a certain level of fluctuation. Basically, each line here, you can see that there are multiple lines. Each line is an immune parameter or immune factor, and it fluctuates between a particular level. When it exceeds that level, it either has an autoimmune disease, or when it goes below a certain level, it results in susceptibility to infection and cancer. So can I have the next slide? So, to summarize what we see here, immune functions vary between subjects and fluctuate over time within a subject. As I said, it keeps fluctuating and between a particular range. In healthy population, these fluctuations define the boundaries of a normal range and immune functions, providing optimal health. There is nothing called increasing the immunity here. It is all about having an optimal health and an optimal immune function, so that the immune system can mount an immune response whenever it needed and then come back to its normal ground state. Genetic makeup, past experiences contribute to the difference between subjects. All of us will not have similar level of immunity. A person X may have immunity different to a person Y, and the various factors, controls these immunity. That is genetic, past experiences, environmental factors, lifestyle, and also can change the immune parameters either permanently or specific or temporarily. And when you move these parameters outside the range, it can lead to some clinic disease conditions. So it's important to keep the immune system between this particular range. So that's the key message that I want to convey. Like, immunity is not a linear scale. It is, operates within a particular level, and you can't exceed these levels. Next slide, please. So the question is, if this is how the immunity operates, then, can this be modulated? That's the question. Okay. So, since this COVID has hit us, I just wanted to highlight this, everybody is going through some sort of challenge, and it creates a lot of stress in people's mind. And my suggestion is, you should find a way to clear this stress. The reason is stress is going to modulate your immune response. So this is a, very, some experiment that was done really 20 years ago, nearly, I would say. What they did is they took rats, and one was left in a group without untouched. The other one was asked to swim in the water, because when you drop the rat in the water tub, it keeps swimming from one end to the other. Then third one group was they took the rats, restrained in their hands, and then left it back. They did this repeatedly for X number of times. And then they looked at some of the immune parameters, particularly in this case, TNF alpha, which is a pro-inflammatory immune response, pro-inflammatory immune marker. And you can see that, when you don't do anything to the rats, there is the levels were very normal. But when you put them in some sort of swimming, you can see that, the parameters have, the TNF alpha levels have gone high. And when you restrain them with your hands, the levels are even more higher. So clearly says that, when you get stressed, this immune modulation is happening, and which is not good for you. And similar trend was observed with IL-22, although the effect was not that predominant. But then IL-22 is an IL-17, or again a pro-inflammatory response mediator. So the point that I want to make here is immune system can be modulated, and there are various factors that control the immune system, and stress is one such factor. So if there is a way you can relieve them, it will be always best. And go to the next slide. So one of the biggest, best way to relieve your stress is some physical exercise, and there are some data to support it. This is, looking at some of the pro-inflammatory cytokine markers under when one is subjected to yoga. The blue, the yellow line is, where people don't practice yoga, whereas the blue line is people who practice, in a less frequency, and then the gray line is people who practice yoga in a high frequency. And you can clearly see that, IL-6, again, which is one of the pro-inflammatory immune response, as you see the three different groups, the levels are coming down as you practice more and more yoga. And its similar trend has been observed for TNF alpha and IL-1 beta. Both of them are pro-inflammatory, immune mediators. So, when you are relaxing and when you are relieving your stress, the immunity, this is one of the immune parameters. All this comes and plays a role in, when you have an infection or in cancer. But when you are relaxed, the levels are really at a very, very low level. But at the same time, when you have these levels at a very basal level, when you have a challenge, these are going to really respond very well. And that's what happens normally in an individual, where, it will work out, the immune response will respond in a way that it will clear the infection or the cancer or any other situation very effectively when you have it optimally balanced. Next slide, please. So let's go into some specific scenarios. What happens in various conditions, like cancer, immune modulation. So what generally happens in cancer is, a tumor mass gets built up in a body, and then they release the tumor antigens. Either it can be a tumor-specific antigen or tumor-associated antigen. They get picked up by the antigen-presenting cells, and then they migrate to the draining lymph node, where they prime the CD4, CD8 T cells, and these CD4, CD8 T cells comes out and releases stimulators or cytokines that keep their function up and running, and then they go and kill the tumor cells. the CD8 T cells kills the tumor cells. This is what normally happens in a normal person, and this keeps happening all the time in our body because there are mutations that happen, and as a result there are some cancerous cells here and there gets formed, but then the immune system keeps a vigil for this, and then it just keeps clearing the tumor cells or the tumor mass. So this is what happens in a normal immune system. But what happens is over a period of time, when there is when you are stressed or any other immune modulatory situation happens, the tumor microenvironment gets an opportunity to change the immune system or skew the immune system in a way that it makes the immune cells to be less efficient. For example, there are multiple factors that control the function of a T cell. For example, you can see that the TCR, when it interacts with the MHC complex through the antigen, it induces a positive signal, and similarly, the CD8, CD80, CD28 co-stimulatory signal also induces a positive signal on the T cell function, whereas the CTLA4 and CT80 interaction results in negative signal. And this is also similarly the PDL1, PD1 also induces a more negative signal on them. And this sort of positive and negative signal is an important balance that is needed in a normal condition, because otherwise these T cells will lose their function or become activated too much, and then they won't be able to perform, and then they will die faster. So we need to have these cells optimally activated, and this is the reason why we have all this interactions that are happening between the T cells and the cancer cells or the antigen presenting cell, and it provides a fine balance in the level of activation. But over a period of time, what happens is the cancer cells either expresses higher level of PDL1 or the CD80, which then results in increased negative signal to the T cells, and they don't function efficiently. So as a result, they can't kill the tumor cells. That's what happens with in most of the tumor conditions, and this is now currently being used for therapeutic purposes, and there are loads of antibodies that are targeted towards CTLA4, PD1. I have indicated some of them there. You can see that, and also targeting the ligands for them. So when you block these interactions, what happens is, you can see the slide, focus on the slide on the right-hand side. When you block this infection, what happens is the antibodies, through antibodies, there is there is no inhibition of killing. These T cells will go and kill the tumor cells, whereas in a normal situation, they won't be able to kill the tumor cells. So this is what happens. And even here, we are not trying to increase the immune response or or the immunity level in these patients. Rather, the immune response has gone, or the immune response has gone out of that range, and we are trying to bring it within that range so that the immune system can get activated and optimally and go and clear these tumor cells. So that's what we are trying to achieve through these blocking the targets on the T cells. And this is currently a huge market for immunotherapy in cancer. So again, people who are interested more should go and look at information on this. Next slide, please. So the other situation where there is an immune balance is imbalance is autoimmune diseases. So as I said, there is always a balance between regulation and stimulation. When this gets tilted towards the regulation, there's more regulation that results in cancer and other conditions. Whereas when it gets tilted towards more stimulation, you end up in having autoimmune diseases. What happens is in autoimmune diseases is I focus on the right hand side of the slide. There is increased cytokine in these individuals, and increased co-stimulation of T cells, T effector cells, and TLR mediated signaling. And there's various factors that also play a role here, that is genetics, environment, and the tissue homeostasis. All this play a role. When you have all this cytokines increased, there is a high chance of getting autoimmune diseases. And when you have it balanced, or some of these T regulatory cells, IL-10 and TGF-beta, which are all down-regulated, then you get little less autoimmune diseases. And again, what I am trying to tell is it's a balance between the regulation and stimulation, which decides how you respond to a particular condition. You can't have it tilted towards one side or the other. And anything that tilts these things means, it's a danger for the immune system. So that's all I want to say here. Again, using this, next slide, please. Several therapeutic approaches has been tried out, and this is in rheumatoid arthritis. You can see that several antibodies that block the function of CD86 and then CD20, IL-1. All of them has been explored for clinical use right now. Again, they are not trying to enhance the immunity, or rather they are trying to strike an optimal or correct whatever has gone wrong with the immune system, so that the immune system can function and maintain a optimal balance. And here I just wanted to mention that, this is a product that is in the market currently, Atrisor from Atrimedx. And what we understand from the data is that, it works through immune modulation, and it prevents psoriasis, and it cures psoriasis and so on. So I'm not going into the scientific details of it. Probably, it's not the right place to do that. And maybe, Atrimed team will be able to give more information on this. Next slide, please. So in terms of viral infections, again, this is pretty much normal immune response. When you encounter a virus, what happens is the dendritic cells, macrophages take up the cells, and then they, activate the CD4, CD8 T cells, and then they go and clear the viruses in wherever it is infected region is. And then they also leave a memory. As a result, when you encounter the virus again, you will generate a much more stronger immune response more quickly, and at the same more regulated. You clear the virus very efficiently. And this generally happens in acute viral infections like flu, dengue, chikungunya, and SARS-CoV as well. So we will come back to the SARS-CoV part a bit later. What happens in chronic viral infections is, when you have chronic viral infections, or what happens is when you have a infection like HIV, HPV, what happens, the immune system is, skewed, and it leads to an inappropriate response. As a result, the T cells and B cells functions are dampened, and you don't, have the efficient immune response to clear the virus. Rather, the immune system becomes exhausted. What happens is, you will generate an immune response, but over a period of time, the T cells loses its function, which is called immune exhaustion. And as a result, you won't be able to clear the viruses, which is why the problem persists in these patients. And as this is the case with HIV, HPV, HCV, and even in cancer. Very similar scenario with cancer, because over a period of time, the cancer tissues, makes the T cells and the B cells, less efficient in their function. Next slide. So far, what I have shown is, immunity can be modulated for optimal health. And to do that, we need some sound understanding on the immunobiology of the disease condition. And we need strong scientific evidence on its immune modulatory function, because, there's a lot of information has been generated on these, particularly the three aspects that I covered, that is cancer, autoimmune diseases, and viral infections. A lot of scientific evidence exists. And also, whatever the approach that we follow needs regulatory approval, and all these products that I talked about, which are used in under clinical trials or under thing, are all heading towards an FDA approval. So that's the level of scrutiny is what is goes through these products. Next, please. So next part, the two part that I want to cover is immune responses during COVID and the pros and cons of modulating the immune responses during COVID. Next, please. So what happens during COVID? When we, get exposed to the virus, the virus goes to the lungs, that is the lower respiratory tract, and then, the lungs acts as a sentinel for various pathogens. It keeps, since it gets exposed to various pathogens constantly through inhalation, and it knows when to respond, when not to respond. So in this case, coronavirus infection, what happens is when you get exposed to the virus, the dendritic cells, these are tissue resident dendritic cells. They are specialized cells. They are not like, you can find only, very little amount of these cells in the blood, but they are more exist on the tissues in the body, in particularly in various organs. So their job is to monitor these organs and be vigilant. If there is something, an assault is there via an infection, they immediately pick up those viruses and then they go to the draining lymph node. So that's where where they recruit T cells in the draining lymph node, and then they generate an immune response, that is T cell and B cell response against these viral antigens, and then the T cells and B cells return back to the lung, and where they try to fight the infection. So there is two scenarios here in the lung that happens. One is if the virus itself has the ability to cause cytotoxicity or cytopathology, there will be dead cells there, okay, already from the lung. Plus, when the T cells comes to the lungs, if it sees that already the virus is causing a lot of damage, plus there will be a lot of immune mediators that are released by this damage, the T cells are going to go crazy, and they will proliferate and generate a very strong immune response in the lung. And this is exactly what happens in COVID as well, and resulting in a phenomenon called cytokine storm, where a huge amount of cytokine comes in, and then your entire lungs is filled with cells and fluids, and you have difficulty in breathing. Probably, most of you are clinicians, you guys know this better, but the immunology side of it is that, there is a very strong immune response. So in COVID, that's what happens in COVID in terms of immunopathology. Next slide, please. So what some of the therapeutic approaches has been that, if we slow down the immune activity, will it be helpful? And this is one such product where itolizumab, which is from Biocon, they showed great success with this product when they blocked the immune response by blocking anti-CD6, which is the antibody itolizumab, which goes and binds to anti-CD6. They showed that, you can see that, when you block it, your immune response or the inflammatory response is significantly reduced, and as a result, the patients are responding better. And they have done this in phase 3 clinical trial, and now I think they are currently in phase 4. So basically, the message here is, during COVID, if you block the immune activity, it is beneficial. So that's the message that I want to convey here. And next slide, please. So basically, again, this is the mechanism of action against CD6. When you have this anti-CD6 blocked, it stops the release of various cytokine. As a result, the immunopathology is reduced, and people recover much faster and better. And similarly, there are similar approaches have been currently tried out by blocking IL-6 receptor, IL-1 receptor, and also dexamethasone, another steroid, was also found to be very helpful in treating these patients by modulating or dampening their immune system. So overall, the approach in treating these patients, particularly when it comes to the immunology side, is that, reduce the immune activity when the patient is having the infection. So that seems to be the approach in managing this patient. So if that is the case, if under these scenarios, if you are taking a immunity booster, even if it is considered as they sell it as immunity booster, what happens to the immune system? What sort of impact it has? Whether it will really does something to the immune system and makes it worse, or it brings it down, we really don't know. But definitely, boosting the immune system during these conditions is not an ideal option. So next slide, please. So this is again the summary of what I said. Existing treatment strategies suggest that blocking the pro-inflammatory response helps the recovery of COVID patients. Taking unwarranted immunity boosters without medical supervision is dangerous during COVID, because that's what the immunology, the immunobiology of COVID is telling us. Next slide, please. So then the last part is that, can nutraceutical and phyto products modulate immune response? Again, I'll tell you, this is not my core area of expertise. But I've tried to take some examples and tell you, what has happened, what is happening, and what is the best way to move forward if you want to really develop nutraceuticals and phytoproducts for modulating immune response. So next slide, please. So this is again a study, where they have shown that, like, vitamin D, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, green tea, help in autoimmune and inflammatory disorders, and vitamin D, vitamin E, and probiotics in reducing infection. So this is, you can see that, like, there are various cell types and what sort of impact it has on various on their function. So their function has been, in terms of recruitment, antimicrobial, peptide generation, phagocytosis, and so on. I'm not going into the details of this, but overall, this sort of studies tells you that, like, that nutraceuticals can be used to modulate the immune response, effectively. Next, please. This is, again, another study. Can I go to the next slide? Where they looked at, basically it's a summary of various studies and a review where they say that, like, how it various products, plant-derived products, modulate the immune response. Again, I'm not going into the details. They have given this is a table for the alkaloids, and this table runs for 3 pages, so I'm really not able to bring them, capture all the information into a single slide. But you can go and look at it, where you can see that, like, what are the essential oils that are found to be, modulating the immune response: flavonoids, quinoins, and terpenoid. Next slide, please. Hello. Next, yeah. So again, this is, curcumin. I'm sure most of you are aware, is the golden nutraceutical. It's multi-targeting for multiple chronic diseases. It exhibits an anti-inflammatory activity through the suppression of numerous cell signaling pathways, including the NF-kappa B, STAT3, NFR, ROS, and COX2. And you can see that, like, how the product, this particular curcumin, has gone through the various phases. Initially, they did in vitro studies and then in vivo studies, and now a lot of things are under clinical trials and various different conditions. Like, probably this is one of the widely studied phytoproduct that is, and I still feel that, like, the clinical trials has to, be completed, and hope something comes out, very effectively in the management of various disease conditions. So, but one of the challenges with all these studies is, like, there is so much inconsistency between the studies. Some studies says product X shows a immune modulatory role, whereas some others shows, totally opposite or different. So there is a challenge in putting all the information together and coming out with a consensus on whether a particular product is immunomodulatory or it doesn't have any function. So that's a challenge, and the reason for that is, like, it lacks a lot of scientific studies. And to address this, what next slide, please, is the Institute for Life Sciences, International Life Sciences Institute, along with the European Nutrition and Immunity and Probiotics Task Force, commissioned a study where they looked at the, how, these nutrition products modulate the immune response, and what sort of study needs to be, or how the study has to be structured. So they came out with a framework. It's a massive study with involved people from academic, industry, and regulatory people, and they came out with these recommendations on how to do these studies, particularly if you have to prove a particular, if you have to make a claim for a particular nutraceutical product in terms of their immune function. Next slide, please. So the study talked about methodological and technical considerations, whether, when you have a product, this is what the claim is, whether you need to use the cells as the parameter or whether you need to use the various immune mediators as the parameters. All those technical considerations are considered in those framework. And then how to select the immune function markers, like, what are the markers to select, and then also prioritizing those markers. Like, you can have 100 markers with you, but then, which group belongs to where and what sort of function it reflects. So selection and prioritization of markers, and here they have identified around 75 markers for this purpose. and then clustering these markers into groups of clinical relevance. Like, you can't have everything spread across everywhere. So you need to segregate them into different functions with beneficial and harmful and no effect categories. So again, they have done this categorization here, and then scenarios to interpret changes in sets of markers. In the sense, like, this is a little complicated scenarios, like, where providing a framework. Yeah, the scenarios were drafted describing the potential changes in the values of markers compared with the relevant reference range. So whether it falls within the range or outside the range, or what sort of clinical situation. So again, I would recommend, like, if you are really interested, go into the study report and have a look at it. You will be able to find a lot of information. It is really difficult for me to capture all the important things in this particular talk or in this slide. So based on this framework, what they came out is, next please, a sort of a flow system where you can start with a particular modulation, a study, and then you can decide whether yes or no, and if it is yes, you go into screening for further markers, class grouped into A, C, D, and B, and so on. So it's a sort of a flow chart. I would rather recommend you to go into this, and then, but I would like to draw your attention to the colored ones where you can see scenarios 1, 2, 4, 5 is beneficial modulation of immune function. So it tells you, okay, there is a good, modulation. And then scenario 3 is potentially undesired modulation of immune function. So those sort of scenarios. And if you go further in the bottom, scenario 1 interpretation is not possible. Scenarios 2, 4, and 5 beneficial modulation of immune response, and then scenario 3 is potentially undesired modulation of immune function, and scenario 1 to 5 maybe interpretation is not possible. So it would give you a framework on how to go about improving a nutraceutical or a nutrition product, whether it has the ability to modulate an immune response or not. I found this study very extensive, and also, this is what if such an approach is followed, it will be a great benefit in understanding whether a nutraceutical has any effect on the immune system or not. Next slide, please. So the final part is, like, to tell you about the gut health, because the reason is, 70% of your body's immune cells can be found in the digestive tract, which provides a lot of opportunity for us to modulate the immune response. So, a healthy gut improves the immune response, reduces inflammation, decreases the duration of infection, and so on, enhances digestive health. But what is lacking is, many of these studies have been done ex vivo conditions. That means, whatever the products have been tested under ex vivo conditions. But when you take it orally, whether the immune cells receives them in an intact form, because when you take them orally, you need to your product gets exposed to extreme pH in your stomach at pH 3, and then more alkaline pH as you move down in the gut. So are their products stable, and it gets the same, and is the product safe in those extreme pH, and if it is safe, whether it will have the same effect on the immune cells there. So this is an interesting area for future research, and even not only research, for the market, because this offers a great potential in terms of products that can be delivered. Right now, the nutraceutical market is around $350 billion by 2019, and this is expected to grow around 8% CAGR over the next 5-6 years. So it's an important aspect, and some of the countries in the West has really putting a lot of effort on this. So if you are really interested in developing such products, do keep in mind the study that, or the framework that was provided by the ILSI, and follow that and see if some cutting edge products can be developed. So with that, next slide, please. So I'm just going to summarize what I have tried to highlight. Or immunity is provided by a complex biological system operating on a non-linear scale. Again, I want to stress this non-linear scale. It's not that you can keep on increasing your immunity. Immunity can be modulated for therapeutic purposes, no doubt about it. And there is a lot of evidence and a lot of approaches are currently in use right now. Modulation of immunity does not mean increasing the immune parameters activity, rather keeping it optimal so that you respond in the best possible way when you have a challenge. COVID causes severe immunopathology, and blocking pro-inflammatory response is beneficial in the management of patients. Nutraceuticals and phyto products show potential for immune modulation but lack scientific data to back their claim. Taking unwarranted immunity boosters without medical supervision could be dangerous during COVID because, if it goes and skews your immune system, you really don't know, and then what is going to happen, and it may really result in, undesired outcomes. So with that, I would like to finish and thank you for listening. Thank you. Next slide. Yeah.
That was an excellent presentation. Clean slides, clean talk, and a lot of information, very crisp. Now
Hello.
I call upon the
I can't
panelists
hear
to-
you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me now? Hello. Can you
Yes.
guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Audible.
Now I
Yes,
call
we can.
upon the panelists to ask questions.
Bharat?
Should we type the questions or ask orally?
You can orally ask.
Yeah, I request a panel member, those who are asking a question, to unmute yourself and ask the question. And once you ask the question, please mute yourself. Thank you.
Bharat, I can't hear anything.
Hello, can you hear me, sir? Hello. Hello?
It is audible here.
I request panelists, if any panel member have any question, I request them to unmute themselves
I think
and
he's
ask the
not
question.
hear us.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. It's not a question actually. First thing what I want to mention here is when we say a immunity booster, most of the times it is
Hello.
thought as a increasing immunity. But it's actually not. Immunity booster is a vague word that has become popular amongst public and fraternity. This does not actually mean that these drugs aimed here increase the pro-inflammatory cytokines and thus worsening the situation. The word is only metaphorically means that it makes stronger, makes you strong enough to combat the onslaught.
Bharat, I can't hear it.
So it's high time we actually stop saying probably this word, not to cause confusion, and use immunomodulators instead.
Hello.
No, I think sir, he can't hear what you're saying.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Hello.
Could everyone hear me?
Yep. Now I can hear you.
Do you want me to tell it again?
Sorry, I totally missed whatever, after I finished talking, I couldn't hear any of you.
Probably I will type and post then.
No,
That will
I
be
think you
easier.
can repeat. Now I think you can hear. Everyone can hear.
No, I just wanted to mention that when we say immunity booster, or that which improves immunity, it's actually a kind of metaphorical word. We never actually mean that these are the drugs whichever aim to do so are going to increase the pro-inflammatory cytokines and thus worsening the situation. So probably we should stop using that word and start using immunomodulators instead.
Yeah, I think it's it sends a very wrong message to the society by saying
Correct. That's
immunity booster. It's
yes.
people think that just by taking more and more these things every day, my immunity is going to increase its amount and I won't get any infection. That's a very, unfortunately, that's a very wrong belief that has been put into people's mind. But
it's a wrong way that we have put it across actually.
yeah. So again, the other thing that we need to also ask is when if you don't, particularly in the context of COVID, if you haven't encountered the virus at all, where is the immunity that is going to come from you? When we talk about immunity, it is about the ability of your body to protect yourself in the shortest time. That is another way to present immunity. If that is the case, if you don't have an antigen exposure at all, what is that you are increasing in your body? Yes, if you have lower if you have the various immune factors in the optimal range, then it gives you the opportunity to respond in the best possible way when you have a challenge. That's all we need to highlight.
True. We need to find out where actually it works and tell really it modulates.
Yep.
Hello.
Yep.
I am Dr. Vinod Kumar. This is a very excellent presentation. What you said finally about the gut.
Mm-hmm.
The Ayurvedic perspective, it is very important. We are giving very important to the management of gut, and the concept of Agni is there in Ayurveda. So that is very relevant point you raised in Ayurvedic perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, gut is a very fascinating area right now because a lot of work is currently being done to understand what happens in the gut, because it is not just about the immune cells alone. Also, it hosts billions and millions of microbes there. And there is an interplay between these microbes and the immune system, and which in fact says that it communicates, there is some sort of signal or some sort of communication is there between the gut microbiome and the brain. So people have gone to that level to say that this is what happens and how important is that. So so any therapeutic intervention or anything that allows immune modulation in a very optimal way through gut is going to be a huge benefit and a market potential as well. Hello?
Dr. Jayadevan?
Yeah, I believe there are no more questions from panel. And
Questions ended. Can I ask a question, Dr. Dam?
yes.
Can you hear me?
I think Jayadev sir has started asking question. Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Yeah, Dr. Shiv, excellent lecture. The information all stuffed into few slides is kind of too much for me to take in. Two requests. One is the question, second is the request. It may be a good idea if you take another lecture on the last two slides. There's a framework of investigating a nutraceutical or similar drugs, immune modulation. The whole lecture on this, so we get into our heads how we should really approach this problem.
Okay.
Then second is, did you in your study come across any modulator that will stimulate the intrinsic part of innate immunity? In other words, the non-specific NK cells or interferon, that's even before the T and B cells come into play.
Well, I haven't done any work to focus on the innate part of the immune system where modulators, but I'm mostly focused on the adaptive cell part. But I can tell you that there are, maybe there are components of the innate immunity itself influences. For example, complement system is found to be promoting more of these antigen presenting cells and then leading to enhanced antigen presenting capability. So those sort of things are there, but then any external factors acting on the innate immune system, I'm not aware of it. Maybe they exist. I'm not aware of it.
That may be another area to investigate, because in the absence of an antigen and in the absence of having 2 to 3 weeks to stimulate the antibodies or T cells through antigen, we have this window of first 14 days where a non-specific response may be beneficial, as is happening that we have 75 or 80% asymptomatic people. I suspect is the non-specific intrinsic response that is functioning here, the interferons, NK cells, complement system, etc., etc. So maybe a good idea somewhere along the line, we should dwell on that also, that part of it.
No, I totally agree with you. In fact, what I can go ahead, go one step further and tell you, when you have a strong innate immune response, the innate immune system also has the ability to clear the viruses or reduce the viral load. Particularly, for example, you get exposed to a lung infection, and if your innate immune system is strong, it's going to reduce the viral load by the time your T cells and B cells arrive. If they are not doing their job, what is going to happen is the viral load is going to be very high in the lung by the time the T cells and B cells comes. And when the T cell B cells comes, when the viral load is above a certain threshold, T cells go crazy. And that's one of the reasons for the severe immunopathology that happens in viral infections in these patients. So when you have some way, if you can enhance the innate immunity and reduce the viral load till you are getting help from the adaptive immunity, then that could be another interventional approach that can be used. Is that what you are saying, Dr. Shiban?
Yes. I mean, I don't have any evidence since you studied on this. I thought maybe you found during your reading any evidence that why are asymptomatic people asymptomatic, why 75% people don't go to the hospital, etc. So my kind of off-the-cuff remark is the intrinsic part of innate immunity. That means even before the cells are infected by the virus, there are chemicals out there already present, are floating around, that respond right away and trying to kill the virus even before there's time to process the antigen. That's what my suspicion is. I thought if you came across anything regarding this, that will explain the majority of asymptomatic people that we have.
Plus, also, it's not necessarily 100% has to be innate immunity driven. It could be some level of cross-protective immunity also.
Correct. Cross-reactive will also be possible.
Yeah. Because, in a country like in India, the amount of pathogens or microbes that we get exposed based on the living conditions that we live is enormous as compared to any of the other countries. So I suspect there is an element of cross-protective immunity also.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Shaiju. And first of all, I take this opportunity to congratulate Dr. Shiv, sir, because it was an excellent and brainstorming session. Just here, I would like to one of the good aspect of real Ayurvedic concept, because as you are not from Ayurvedic community, just I will bring to your attention to this the beautiful Ayurvedic concept that the whole Ayurvedic treatment, the real Ayurvedic treatment strategy is based on the predominance of this pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory cytokine strategy. We usually call it as Samavastha and Niramavastha actually. But when we forget there is no such demarcation of these two predominance in the body, of course. So usually we treat the cases most of the time in a fresh case in the aspect of that there is a predominance of pro-inflammatory cytokine. Okay, so that whether we use the Amapajana drugs, but when we forget about all and these nutraceuticals or in Ayurvedic aspect, I should say there are so many rasayanas. These rasayanas we should use not in the very beginning stage. So only it is told advised that it should be used only in the later stage only. It is very important. No, not in the very beginning of any disease. It should be used in the very later stage, that these pro-inflammatory cytokines or the Samavastha should be properly controlled. Then only we should go for these nutraceuticals. This is a very beautiful concept of Ayurveda. But unfortunately, nowadays the concept is not in practice, and everybody is behind these nutraceuticals. And of course, the Ayurvedic nutraceuticals are not only immunoboosters, they are immunomodulators. Of course, some of them are immunoboosters we have, but most of them are immunomodulators. But most of in the name of Ayurveda, everybody popularize these some of the Ayurvedic drugs, and they popularize it as boosters. But actually, the real principle is not according to not like this. So this just I want to bring to your notice. And I have one doubt. So what is your opinion regarding the possibility of immunomodulation in this in comorbidities like this diabetes and old age peoples? What is the possibility? And this is my first question. And second question, how far this immunomodulation is adopted as a treatment strategy in modern medicine, if you have any experience to share regarding this?
Okay, so your first question, whether immunomodulation is possible in comorbidities like diabetes or in old age people. First, I will talk about the old age people. See, the immunobiology of old age people is very different to what we see in young people, because as they become old, their immunology changes significantly, in the sense they get more and more regulatory cells, and as a result, their ability to respond to a particular infection or to a particular condition like cancer is very different. There is reduced actually, and that one of the reasons why it makes it more susceptible to infection and cancer as we grow older. So whether we can modulate the immune response in these older patients, to be honest with you, there is very, very little information on the immunobiology of older people. So we really don't know how to model, unless we have a very good understanding on this, their immunobiology. It's very dangerous to modulate the immune system in older people. That will be my view on that. Secondly, on comorbidities like diabetes, see, diabetes sort of reduces the immune response. It's not that diabetes itself is more immune mediated. It is more than that. When you have a comorbid condition, your immune system is the way it responds is dampened, I would say, or it doesn't give you that optimal protection that you need. Yes, we may be able to play a role there, particularly if it is a safe drug to work on. So in those conditions, in those sort of comorbid conditions, it is possible that we may be able to boost the immune response, or in the so-called boost what we are talking, or more than boost, I think we can make it optimal by some sort of immune modulation. And I would rather than having a food or a nutraceutical or any sort of Ayurvedic drug, they can even try to modulate their immune response by physical exercise. That will be much more healthy option to begin with. But again, these are all areas that we need scientific data. When you have a comorbid conditions, what sort of impact it has on your immune system when you follow yoga. It needs a proper study, and those information has to be collected. And without the scientific data, it is really difficult for us to, formulate any therapeutic option. But there is potential. And then there is the second question. Sorry, what's the second question? I can't hear you.
I think you have already covered that in the elderly. I think you have already answered it.
Okay.
The second question was whether there are any existing, immunomodulators in Modern
Modern
medicine. I think
medicine.
that was covered in
Yes.
your lecture. You have shown quite a few of them, but you can.
Yeah. I think that there is enough evidence to show in modern medicine that there are immunomodulators, whether you take it in terms of cancer or autoimmune diseases or viral infections. There is enough body of literature, and most of these are cutting edge products. When I say cutting edge, they all act precisely on a particular point in the immune system, and when it has that sort of interaction, what effect it has at a cellular level and at a molecular level, it's pretty much all captured very efficiently, and that is the level of scientific depth they go in. So that's probably, if they can do it, I'm sure that is possible in all other branches of medicine also. The tools are available already.
Okay. And one more questions from you. What do you think regarding the scope of vaccines in a comorbidity like diabetes, severe diabetes? If this vaccination is going to help, or does it expect as some limitation is expected?
No, it will help because still it's not that in a comorbid condition you won't generate an immune response to the vaccine. You will still generate maybe the fold response may not be very strong, but then when you have once you have an immunity developed in the body, the body itself has the ability to amplify and handle it. It's not that you generate an immunity and it stays at that level. That's the beauty of immunity. See, I'll tell you, for all the vaccination that you got done in during your childhood, there are cells that are specific against that vaccine, and they are not in huge number. They will be in, say, for example, if you take million cells, there will be 10 cells of a particular against a particular vaccine. But the moment when you encounter an antigen, what happens is those 10 cells becomes 10 million cells in no time. So I really don't see why in comorbid conditions these vaccines won't work. It will work, maybe very less efficient in generating an initial immune response, but the body will be able to make over for it at a later time point when somebody encounters the infection.
Thank you.
Bharat, can you read out the rest of the questions? There are some questions coming there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Dr. Shiv, with your permission, I would like to take some of the questions from audience.
Sure.
Yeah, very first question we have from audience is, can you please explain the role of immunosuppressants in the condition like cancer, where immune therapy plays a major role?
No, immunosuppression doesn't happen in cancer, because rather, your immune system is to some extent is already, compromised there. So all the current approaches in cancer is to, get your immune system working efficiently. So I don't think, in cancer you can use immunosuppressants.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the second question is, there were some studies which showed evidence that unexposed participants with COVID-19 has developed specific immunity towards COVID-19. Is that possible?
Yeah, that could be possible. I talked about cross-protective immunity. See, there are could be some level of the antigens that are against which we are supposed to respond to COVID. We may be, we might have got that through some other infection. It is possible. Cross-protectivity is possible.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the next question I would like to take is, what about including gut-brain axis in the comprehensive framework of immunity?
Yeah, I think that is a very hot area and very relevant. Yes, I think that's how the future will go in terms of understanding immunity and a lot of other functions. Definitely that is there. Already there are enough research being done on those lines, and you can even say that people have showed that the interaction between the immune cells and the gut microbiome, or the gut microbiome on its own, has the ability to control brain functions or brain signals.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And the next question I would like to take is, how do we understand one autoimmune disorder in a person leading to other autoimmune disorder in the same person? I want to put it in another way, like how do we understand multiple autoimmune diseases in the same individual?
multiple autoimmune, see, one autoimmune disease itself is more challenging to handle because it depends on what they have. For example, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, then your susceptibility to other autoimmune diseases could be high. And to be honest with you, I really don't have a clear answer to that question.
So one autoimmune disorder may be a stimulant or a pathway for the another autoimmune disorder.
Possible, because once you have your immune system, as I showed in the slide, if there is an immune imbalance, and if you are, because of the imbalance, there is no regulation, the probability of getting other autoimmune disorders is also very high because you have lost the regulation. So there is a possibility that, you will, one can have a second autoimmune condition, but I really don't know how much multiple autoimmune conditions exist in an individual. I really feel, if it is the case, I really feel sorry for them because it's not easy to manage them.
Yeah, very true, sir. Very true. And next question I would like to take is nowadays people are started using some natural remedies, particularly home remedies, to get protection against COVID-19, believing that they are going to increase the immunity against it. And what is your opinion on it, sir?
See, I think I made it. I think that was my first statement from the whole talk, in the sense, unwarranted, immunity booster formulations is not recommended during COVID, because you don't know what it is going to do on your immune system. And my suggestion would be that, please don't take such things which is not recommended by your, clinicians or physicians. See, unless there is a proper recommendation.
Yeah, that's a really valid point, I believe. And I would like to take the next question, that is, are there any side effects from the antibody therapy?
You mean for the COVID scenario?
Yeah, for the COVID scenario in specific.
See, I really, to be honest, what is the side effects of convalescent plasma therapy? I really don't know. I'm definitely, I haven't looked at in terms of scientifically whether there is any side effect. I really don't know the answer for that. But, in general, when you don't have much options left, that is what being adopted. And still, even if it is having some side effects, I think it may be very minimal, and the antibodies from the convalescent plasma may be more beneficial.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And the next question I would like to take is, what is your opinion on advanced analysis methodology like cytosol, which is put forwarded by Dr. Siva Ayadurai in assessing efficacy of herbal products and medicines in comprehensive immune stabilization?
Sorry, come again. Cytosol.
Cytosol, it is the software proposed by Siva Ayadurai. And what is its reliability in assessing the efficacy of herbal products and medicines in comprehensive immune stabilization?
Okay, see, I really don't have an understanding about this cytosol. Okay, number one. And secondly, the biological system is much more complex, and unless we understand how these software has been built, whether it takes into consideration all the parameters or all the factors that control an immune system, it's really difficult for us to rely on such systems. So, but it's definitely, worth considering it as a simple tool to begin with, but it has to be, tested, and it may also have to evolve according to the biological systems. So my answer to that is, at this stage, I would not 100% go with it, because biological systems are biological system, and they are heterogeneous, because the way I respond, the way another person responds are different, whereas softwares don't make that discrimination. So I would rather keep away from it for now, unless the software covers those aspects also.
Yeah, correct, sir. And I would like to add one more point to this, your answer. If you want to use cytosol, you can use it with a known experimental results, and you check for the reliability, and later on you may gain a confidence, or you may drop the confidence on using the same software.
Yep.
With the known results, you can try out once.
Yep.
And And with this, I would like to take a next question. Like during COVID treatment in hospitals, doctors are giving vitamin C, zinc sulfate tablets, vitamin D, vitamin E, and all these are going to be really useful if we use the same vitamins as a preventive against COVID-19.
Good question. Generally these vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin D, it seems to be having a good influence on the immune system. There are some evidence to support that, and there are some clinical evidence actually. So yes, it is good to take them, but whether to take them, see, if you ask me, I would rather take it before COVID. But then when you have COVID, I would leave it to the doctor's advice. I won't take it, on your own. So in general, you can take it as a supplement on a daily basis, and that is what many people do, and especially people after a certain age. It has been recommended by many clinicians to take it on a few days in a week. But when you have COVID, I would rather go with what your clinician says.
Yeah, perfect, sir. And I would like to take a next question, like general immunostimulatory drugs, are they safe to use as a public thinks of?
Sorry, repeat the question.
General immunostimulatory drugs which are in the market, are they really safe to use as a public thinks of?
No, it's not safe because they all lack scientific data. Like, you are talking about all those things that I showed in the beginning, like, a particular product increases your immunity and blow on. So first thing is the way they are being marketed has to be changed, number one. And secondly, even if they say that they are able to modulate the immune response, we need scientific data. Without that, I would not take it if I am in their position.
Okay, and I would like to take the next question. Can you please mention the drug target points or proteins for COVID study that can be used as a immunomodulation drug target?
I think they've already, shown, right? Like, one is anti-CD6 that can be used that is already currently used for, reducing the inflammatory response. And then there is IL-6 receptor that are currently also being used, and IL-1 receptor as well. So these are the things that are currently in use for modulating the immune response, particularly in bringing down the inflammatory response during COVID.
Thank you, sir. And my next question is, what causes a negativity of T cells?
What I really don't know what is negativity here, but I understand that, like, it has a negative, or it reduces their level of action or their efficiency in that case. If that is the question, then, again, it is in the context of cancer, I would say that, like, the cancer microenvironment over a period of time learns, to influence the T cells, in the sense they get signals on their surface which can influence the T cells negatively, in the sense they will lose their function or they will get exhausted over a period of time. And that's what happens. And the same thing happens in chronic viral infections also. So if that is the negativity, it is the particular microenvironment learns to change the way T cells work, or some other factors that will control this, and puts a negative signal, or changes the signaling pathways on the T cells, and causes them to be less efficient.
Thank you very much, sir. And my next question from the audience is, why COVID-19 shows differential pathogenicity in different population?
Again, that could be, I think that's something very similar to what Dr. Shiban highlighted in the beginning. It could be because of, how their innate immune response responded, or it could be some level of cross-protective immunity. And also genetics plays a role, that also plays a role. So it is all depends on various factors which control the immune response, plays a role here. Yeah.
Yeah, that is once again a great answer from you. And my next question is, what is the relationship between immune modulation and metabolic activity? I mean, do you expect immunomodulators are interfering with the metabolic activity?
I think, see, to be honest, I think, it's my understanding is that it is the other way around. Metabolic activity will influence your immune function. Whether it is your immune function can influence your metabolic activity, I really, to be honest, I don't know. I don't want to answer something which I don't know.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir. And I have another question from audience side. Like, immunomodulation is not only targeting COVID-19; it simply improves the metabolism in favor of protecting the body against any pathogen. And what is your opinion on my statement?
Yes. Can you repeat that question, Bharat, again, please?
Yeah, the statement from the audience is immunomodulation is not only targeting the COVID-19, and it is also preparing an individual and by improving the metabolism in favor of protecting their system against any pathogen.
No, I think that's a fair statement. I would say, if you, I think luckily the audience used the term immune modulation. If you are trying to modulate the immune system to keep it in a very optimal way, you can do that by, by some sort of physical activity and or through some sort of nutraceuticals or something, healthy options. And if you can maintain it within that particular optimal range, then I would say that will give you a good health.
Thank you, sir. And I hope these are the questions we had from on audience side. And if any questions from panel, I would like to take.
Shiv, it was excellent.
Thank you.
Shiv, since you were one of the, I think, guys who are involved in the most advanced aspect of immune therapy, like CAR T cells, can you just talk about it for 2 minutes?
Okay. See, basically what happens in cancer is your T cells, over a period of time, I told that they lose their ability to kill the cancer cells. So in CAR T technology, what they do is they take the T cells and then they introduce the TCR onto the T cells. Once they introduce the TCR, that is TCR here is T cell receptor. So this particular T cell receptor recognizes a particular tumor antigen. So if these tumor antigens are expressed on the cancer surface, when you inject these cells in big number, so what they do is they take the T cells from a patient and then they introduce the T cell receptor onto the cell surface, and then they amplify in certain number. And once you amplify, you infuse this into the patients. Now these T cells are, supercharged. Okay. And when they go and sees that tumor cells expressing these tumor antigens, they will go and attack them and kill them. And this is exactly what is currently being used on CAR technology. It's a very, very simplistic form of CAR technology. And in order to do this approach, you need to know what are the tumor antigens and what are the, whether you have the T cell receptor available for that or identified for that, and you are able to clone them into, express them on the T cell surface through various approaches. Either you can do it RNA mediated transduction or, an infection and then express it. So the multiple approaches are being tried, and this is one of the cutting edge area for cancer therapy right now. And a lot of companies are currently focusing on this approach. Either it can be targeting a single TCR or a multiple TCR or bispecific TCR. A variety of approaches are being done. And in fact, this is a booming area right now.
Thank you. So what we get is, there are a lot of terminologies and we cannot use the terminologies loosely. When we have to make a claim, we have to create data. I mean, that is what science is all about. It was a wonderful lecture. Now I call upon Dr. Shiban to deliver the vote of thanks.
Hello, sir. I'm Dr. Sadat. Can I ask you one question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. No problem. First of all, I really appreciate Dr. Shankar Balasubramanian. It's a great speech. Definitely, he has explained each and every aspect of immunity, immune modulation, everything. Particularly, very important thing is that the healthy gut is for a healthy person. That is the same definition is saying in the Ayurveda. As an Ayurveda doctor is a very interesting point that. And I just want to know about the simply how can we evaluate or any other parameter can be evaluated when IgG or IgM or absolute eosinophil count. How can we calculate any immune condition, immunity of a person? Is possible?
See, okay. See, as such, there is no test available to measure the immunity of an individual. But what we can understand is how a person responds to an antigen when they are exposed. And we have, there are some methods available. For example, you can we can understand how a person responds to a tumor antigen, how a person responds to a recall antigens. All this can be tested in a lab, but it all remains at a lab right now. We don't have a clinically validated immunity test yet. Who knows? We may be able to come out with one soon.
Thank you so much.
My turn, Dr. Shiv. Dr. Damji was an excellent lecture. On behalf of Atrimed, thank you all for attending it. My special thanks goes to Dr. Shiv, who's profound and deep in his knowledge. And this lecture could easily be split into 6 lectures, a series of lectures to have a better flavor. I will invite Dr. Shiv in future also split lecture into 4 lectures. So it's kind of more comprehensible at that time. I thank you, our participants, especially ones that ask questions. Thank you, the Ayurvedic Association and all the office bearers. Thank you, Bharat, for organizing this, and Dr. Damleji, thank you again for leading it. We look forward to you all and many more participants in our future lectures, and we'll welcome any suggestions that you have for improving this series. Ultimate aim is that we all get on the same page and understand each other. Thank you very much, all of you. Thanks.
Lastly, I will make an announcement. The next lecture will be by Dr. Deepak Ramji. He is a professor at Cardiff University, where Shiv also was there once. And he will be talking about his experiences with using botanicals in immunomodulation and inflammation. So his focus area will be cholesterol.
Yeah, he's focused on cardiovascular diseases and cytokine, many of the cytokines responses. So I have interacted with him, and some of his students are working with us in our UK office. So it will be a pleasure to listen.
Yeah, we will invite you as well. Shiv, please, in future also, please come as a panel member for all the lectures so that you can contribute as well. So that's it. It was a beautiful Sunday to have. Thank you very much. And let's call it a day.
Thank you, Dr. Damle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a small announcement for participants. Please refer the feedback link provided on a screen, and you can even find it in a chat box. Please submit your valuable feedbacks through the form, and please receive your certificate soon after the submission of your feedback form. Thank you very much for your kind attention and participation. Thank you once again.